All right, welcome to day 9, our review day. Because it's a review day, we don't have a warm-up. We're just going to go over the homework. So we started out with those 2 points G and R. We wanted 1/5 of the distance from G. So to travel from G to R, if you're going 3 to -4 for the X's, that's 7 to the left. If you're going -4 to 10 for the Y's, that's up 14. So we'll multiply each of those by a fifth, and you get 1.4 and 2.8. So from G's coordinate, the X part, the 3, we want to move left 1.4. When you move left in the X direction, you're subtracting. So 3 minus 1.4 gives us 1.6 for the X value. We wanted to move up 2.8. In the Y's, when you move up, you're adding. So -4 plus 2.8 gives us -1.2. In B, we have a ratio of 2 to 5. So that's really 2 out of 7 whole parts. So we want it 2/7 of the way from R. If you were going to do it from G, you would want 5/7 from G. But they wrote R, so we'll just go with the R. So from R to G now, notice we're doing the reverse directions. -4 to 3 would be going right 7, and 10 to -4 would be going down 14. Multiply those each by 2/7. When you go right 2, you're adding 2 to the X value, so -4 plus 2 is -2. When you go down 4, you subtract 4 from the Y value, so 10 minus 4 is 6. Again, you could have done it with the same directions we did in A and done 5/7, because that would have been from G. In number 2, ratio of 1 to 3, so that's 1 out of 4 total parts, so 1/4. -2 to 5 is going right 7 for the X's. 0 to 8 is going up 8 for the Y's. Multiply by 1/4. So we're moving right 1.75. When you move right, you add to the X. So -2 plus 1.75 gives us -0.25. We end up going up 2. So up you add to the Y. So 0 plus 2 gives us 2 for the Y value. And we have a ratio of 1 to 7. So that means CB is 1 part out of 8 total parts. So that 1 over 7 is just like if we had said 1:7, like we've seen in the other ones. So if we're going from point C, because if we took the 1, or sorry, if we're going from B, that means we took the, because we took the 1, 19 to 3 is 16 to the left. -1 to -5 is down 4. Multiply those by an eighth, you get 2.5. So 19. Going to the left 2 would be -2, so 17. And then down 1/2, subtract a half from the Y, you get -1.5. If you had chosen to do it from A, you would have done 7/8 from A, and you would have done a right 16 and an up 4 and done times 7/8. Okay, and if it's one where you actually get a graph, see if it seems reasonable. 17 -1.5 would be right here. It looks like it is on our line. And it looks like the small part is over with B there, because B would be here and A would be there. So that right part should be 1, and on the left should be 7 of those parts. And then 4, we wanted 7/9 of the length from P. We know that P is 0, 0, and the point in the mid, somewhere in between, is 1421. But what we don't know is what's that other point up here? What's that point Q? We don't know it. So to get from P to Q, we moved right some amount. So I just called it moving right X. And we moved up some amount. I just called moving it up Y. So then we'd multiply those each by 7/9. So we get 7/9 X, and we know that should have ended up with a move to 14. Because we ended up with 14 moving from 0, 0. And the 7/9 Y, we ended up getting 21. So just set up 2 little equations. 7/9 X equals 14. Divide, and you get X is 18. 7/9 Y is equal to 21. Divide, and you get 27. All right, we're going to go through the review today, and we're going to be on page 42. We're going to start out, we're just going to review a bunch of formulas. Our slope formula. Slope is usually represented with m. We do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Our midpoint formula, we're averaging the x's and averaging the y's. So we have x1 plus x2 over 2, comma y1 plus y2 over 2. Distance. We've got d equals the square root of x1 minus x2 all squared plus y1 minus y2 all squared. Keep in mind, you've just got to be consistent with the subtraction ones. Whatever x you pick, the y that went with it should come first. Same idea in the slope. Just be consistent. Whatever y you pick to start out on the top, you should pick the x that goes with it on the bottom. Slope-intercept form of a line is just our y equals mx plus b. Point slope form of a line, we didn't use a ton in this unit, but we have y minus y1 is equal to our slope times x minus x1. Our general form of a circle equation for center radius form, we have x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared, where h comma k is the center and r is the radius. Parallel lines have the same slopes, or you could say equal slopes. Either of those have same slopes, equal slopes. And perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. So if you had 2/3, the perpendicular slope would be negative 3 over 2. Reciprocal means it is flipped, and negative means it's negated, so the sign is changed. All right, moving down to question 9. So we're going to write our equation of our circle. So we're going to have the x part squared plus the y part squared equals the radius squared. Well, the radius squared is 9 because 3 squared gives us 9. 3 times 3 is 9. In our parentheses, we always have the opposite signs of our center. So we do x and then the opposite sign minus 5. And we'll have y minus 0. So this would be correct, what we have written here. But on a multiple choice question, they're not going to have it written as y minus 0 because y minus 0 is just y. So they'll have it written as y squared there. So either of those would be full credit answers, but the bottom one, if it was a multiple choice, is how you would see it written. All right, we want to pass through that point and parallel to this given line. So first thing we want to do is get it in slope-intercept form. So let's subtract the 2x over, and that'll give us 4y equals negative 2x minus 10. So we're going to divide everything by 4. And we'll now have y equals negative 2 over 4 reduces to negative 1/2 x, and negative 10 over 4 reduces to negative 5/2. If we're parallel, we want the same slope. So our slope is what's in front of the x. So we're going to use y equals negative 1/2 x plus b. We want to find the b, so we're going to sub in our x and y values from the point. So we'll have 6 equals negative 1/2 times negative 3 plus b. Well, you can do the negative 1/2 times negative 3 right in your calculator, and that'll give you 3/2 plus b. So I'm just going to rewrite this up here. 6 equals 3 halves plus b. We'll subtract 3 halves in each spot. 6 is really 12 halves, so 12 halves minus 3 halves gives us 9 halves. And if you can do that right in your calculator if you're not sure of it. And then to finish it off, we just write the equation. So we have y equals minus 1/2 x, and then our b value, so plus 9 halves. If they had asked for perpendicular instead of parallel, we just would have had positive 2 over 1, or in other words, just 2, because we would have the flipped and negated slope. All right, we want to know about these two lines that they gave us. They gave us their equation, so let's get them in slope-intercept form. We'll subtract the 6x over. So that's going to give us 3y equals minus 6x plus 12. And then I'm going to rewrite that over here so I have a little more room. So we can now divide everything by 3, and that'll give us y equals negative 2x plus 2/3. Oops, sorry, I forgot the 1 on my 12. So that's not 2/3. 12 divided by 3 would give us 4. So the other one, we had 8y minus 12 equals 4x. Let's add the 12 over to start. That's 8y equals 4x plus 12. And we usually put the x part first so that we'll eventually be able to get it in y equals mx plus b form. We can divide everything by 8. So we have y equals 1/2 x. And 12 over 8 will give us 3 halves. So what we want to do is look at the slopes now. Our slopes we have are positive 1/2 and negative 2. Well, negative 2 is really negative 2 over 1. Notice those are flipped and negated. We flip the fraction and change the sign, so that's what happens when we have perpendicular. Moving on to 12. Let's sketch a little graph for this. We've got negative 6, 8 as our center. So we'll just put our little tick marks in. So there's negative 6. There's 8. So that's where our center is. And they said we have a circle that's going to just touch the x-axis at one spot. So that means that's as low as it's going to go right there. So that means that our radius is going to be 8. Because the circle will end up looking kind of like that. So we've got a radius of 8, and we've got our center. So we're going to have x part squared plus y part squared equals our radius squared. Well, when we square our radius, 8 times 8 gives us 64. So that rules out choices 1 and 3. In our x part, we always do x and the opposite sign of our center. So x minus the negative 6 will give us x plus 6. And we'll do y, opposite sign of our center, so we'll have y minus 8. So that matches with choice 4. All right, next one, 13. We want to write the equation of the circle. If we have a diameter, we've got to find the midpoint of that to find the center. So we'll start with our midpoint. So we'll average the x's and average the y's. So negative 2 plus 6 over 2. And 3 plus 3 over 2. That's going to give us 4 divided by 2, which is just 2, and 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Well, then we've got to do the distance from our center to one of our endpoints. So I'm going to do that endpoint and our center, and that distance will tell us the radius. So we'll do x minus our x value. So I'm going to do 2 minus the other x value squared. Because I started with 2, I'll then start with 3 minus 3 squared. This is minus a minus is a plus, so it'll give us 4 squared, which is 16, plus 0 squared, which is 0. And if you try square root of 16 in your calculator, that works out nice as 4. Now this d, I was really doing d, the distance between them, but it's actually our r, which is the radius. So we've got our center and our radius, so we can write the equation of our circle now. We'll do x part squared plus y part squared equals the radius squared. So the x part will have x minus 2, because it's always the opposite sign, y minus 3. And then when we square the radius, we'll just get 16. Next one, we've got a midpoint that they tell us is 2, 1. We've got point A is 7, negative 1. So 7, negative 1 is out here. 2, 1 is here. That's our midpoint. So there's got to be some point up here that's the other endpoint that we're looking for B. So here's A, here's B, and that's what we don't know. Well, let's imagine B is x comma y. So we know our midpoint, 2 comma 1, should equal 7 plus x over 2, because that's averaging the x's. Negative 1 plus y over 2. And then we're just going to set up two equations, one for the x part and one for the y part. So we'll do 2 equals 7 plus x over 2, and 1 equals negative 1 plus y over 2. We'll put those each over 1 and cross multiply. So we'll get 7 plus x equals 4 over here. Subtract the 7 over and we'll get x is negative 3. And the other one will cross multiply. We'll get negative 1 plus y is equal to 2. We'll add the 1 over to get y equals 3. Meaning our point B is just negative 3 comma 3. Next one we've seen several times in this unit, our perpendicular bisector. Perpendicular bisector needs the perpendicular slope and through the midpoint. So first let's do our slope. We'll pick a y value to start with. I'm going to pick 1 minus the other y value. So negative 5 over our x value that went with 1, which was negative 1, minus our x value of 7. Minus a minus is going to give us a plus. So we'll have 6 on top over negative 1 minus 7 will give us negative 8, and this reduces to negative 3/4. Well, now we need our perpendicular slope, which is the negative reciprocal of that. So flip the fraction and negate it, so we'll get positive 4/3. We'll leave that B for a second, and we'll go do the midpoint. So our midpoint will have negative 1 plus 7 over 2 as we average the x's. 1 plus negative 5 over 2 as we average the y's. Negative 1 plus 7 is 6, divided by 2 is 3. 1 plus negative 5 is negative 4, divided by 2 is negative 2. So we'll just use that point and our slope of the 4/3 to find the equation of our line. So we'll put in our slope, y equals 4/3 x plus b. That's an x, that's a y. So we'll fill them in, negative 2 for the y, 3 for the x. The 4/3 times the 3 will give us 4. We'll subtract the 4 over to get b by itself, and we'll get b is negative 6, meaning our equation is just y equals 4/3 x minus 6. And that's the equation of our perpendicular bisector. All right, we're going to complete the square to get this in center radius form. So let's get the x's and y's on one side and the constants on the other. Now as I bring the x's and y's over, I'm going to make sure to leave space. So I have x squared plus 4x plus something. We got to figure it out. Plus y squared minus 6y plus something. We've got to figure it out. So to complete the square, you do b divided by 2, and then you square it. B is always what's in front of the plain old x. So we are going to have 4 divided by 2 in squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So we'll put 4 here, but you got to balance it off by adding 4 on the other side. For the y's, we're going to have negative 6 divided by 2 squared. So that's negative 3 squared, which is 9. We'll add 9 to the other side. If we combine our like terms on the left, those will add up to give us 25. Now on the right, we know this should end up as an x part squared plus a y part squared. Well, the thing that should go there is whatever you squared to get these values. Well, we did 4 over 2 and then squared. Well, 4 divided by 2 was 2, so this is just plus 2. Up in the red there, we did negative 6 divided by 2 and then squared it. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, so that's why that'll be negative 3. Okay, that's the shortcut way to figure out what goes in your parentheses. From this, we can pick out our center and our radius. The center is just the opposite signs of what's in those parentheses. So we have negative 2, positive 3. And 25 is our radius squared. So we need to think what number times itself gives us 25. And that would be 5. Or you can think of it as taking the square root of the 25. And our last ones to look at are our partitioning ones. We want to find 3/5 of the way along AB, so we are closer to A. So if we're closer to A, that really means we're either 2/5 from A or 3/5 from B. Because the point will divide it in a 2 to 3 ratio, and if we want to be closer to A, we should only be 2/5 from A. So let's do the 2/5 from A1. We'll plot each of the points. So we have negative 2, 4 is our A. And we have 8, 10 is our B. And we'll connect them there just so we'll be able to refer to it. So we're going to do 2/5 from A. So we're starting at A. So notice we're going right. Oops. So notice we are going right and we are going up to get to B. When you go negative 2 to 8, you're going right 10. When you go 4 to 10, you're going up 6. So we're going to take each of those and multiply them by 2/5. When we punch that in the calculator, we're going to get that that tells us we should move right 4 and we should move up 2.4. Well, remember, we're going from A. So we're going to start with point A and we'll have negative 2. If you go to the right, you're adding. So negative 2 plus 4 will give us 2 for the x value. We're starting from A, its y value is 4. If we go up, we add, so we have 2.4, so that gives us 6.4. Just to check, see if 2 comma 6.4 is roughly on there. Well, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a little bit extra, so that seems reasonable. In the next part, we've got the same coordinates, A and B, but we want 2/5 of the way along AB, so we're closer to B. So we can either do this as 2/5 from B or 3/5 from A. So let's do maybe the 2/5 from B. So we're going to work from B. Well, if we're going from B, it's just the reverse movements from before. We're going left 10 and down 6. we're multiplying by 2/5, which we already know what those values are from the last one. It's 4 and it's 2.4. Now keep in mind we're applying this to b, so start with the 8th as the x for b. If you're moving left, you're subtracting. So that's going to give us 4 for the x value. Our y value for b was 10. If we're moving down, we're subtracting. 10 minus 2 is 8. 8 minus 0.4 is 7.6. We'll look at our graph and see if 7.6 is roughly on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it looks like 7.6 is reasonable. All right, our last one for today. We're in a ratio of 1 to 3. So if we're starting from the original point here, the first one listed, that's 1 out of 4 total parts. So we're going to be doing 1/4. We'll plot each of those points. Now to get 10, 19 to fit, we're going to have to go by 2's in our y values. But we should be able to go by 1's in our x values. So -6, 7. We'll go to -6 by 1's, and then 7, remember we're going by 2's for the y, so that's our first point. And then 10, 19, again we're going by 1's, so 10 will take us to the edge of the graph, and 19 will put us up there. With your straight edge, which you can use your side of your calculator, you can connect those, and this will just be a reference for us to see if things are reasonable. As we go from -6 to 10 for x values, we're going right 16. As we go from 7 to 19 for y's, we're going up 12. We said we were moving 1 part out of 4 total parts, so we're going to multiply by 1/4. So if we multiply those by 1/4, we're really going to move right 4 and up 3. Our original point started at -6. If you're moving right, your x value, you're adding to it, so that's going to give us -2. If you are starting at 7 for your y and you're going up, you're adding to it. So that's going to give you 10. And see if what we have is reasonable. -2 would be right here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. It looks like that is reasonable. So that's it for our review video. What I would suggest doing is some extra practice you can do is cover up the work that we did in the video. See if you can do the problems, these same problems, on a separate sheet of paper. See if you can do them on your own now, and then check with the answers that we just did in the video. Because you want to test yourself to make sure you can do them on your own and not just through the video. Have a great rest of your day.